today we have a very exciting topic because it's about television. Hands up of those who don't watch television. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna, in a minute, introduce. Actually, I will ask you, all of you, sort of talk about how you came and why did you end up in television. But one of the important topics about the disruption in television, actually, today even came a very big announcement from HBO. Anybody came across? HBO is actually announced today they're gonna go in April and only on Apple devices only. And those kind of announcements happen basically once a week or if not even more. So much exciting stuff is happening in disrupting the television industry. So I don't want to make a set of presentations, so let's make it more conversational. Our speaker is going to share with their perspective of how the disruption happens. And maybe once you have, we maybe run for 45 minutes in that way, and then we open the floor to a general public, to you to ask questions. There will be a mic circulating, so you're going to be asking questions, okay? Good. So what do we have? We have four are going to come in a minute. Gary, James, and Rida. And I would like to choose the way you want to talk about how come you ended up working in television, and why is it interesting to observe a disruption?
You're starting with me, because I'm at the end. And by the way, I wore a tie today, so you would know I'm the old media guy. Okay, so I want to make that obvious up front. I was one of those people that always was interested in radio and television. Whether it was a radio station, I grew up in Detroit, so it was pretty good radio. Whether it was trying to figure out their format or their playlist, or knowing the schedules of the networks in prime time. There were 3 networks at that time, so it was a little bit easier. But I just knew I always wanted to do that. And I guess I was midway through high school when I realized, wait a minute, I could actually make a career out of this. And I went to undergrad school, Central Michigan, studied primarily radio, got my master's at the Newhouse School at Syracuse University, and out of there, I was off and running. I went into program sales, selling the new Mickey Mouse Club, not the Britney Spears one, the Lisa Welch one. Okay. Pause for lack of recognition. But at any rate, now I was selling programming, and then a few years later, I went off on a lark to pursue something I'd always wanted to do, and I became a TV talk show host in Milwaukee. I had a morning show with a former Miss America, who's now the host of the 700 Club with Pat Robertson, which is kind of interesting. After I got fired from there, because that happens to talent, I made the decision that I couldn't put up with being fired every few years, and came back to New York, worked in the programming department of an ad sales firm, Katz. And what was key about that job is there I learned research, and there I was able to look at ratings and shares, and I saw a lot of. How you doing?
I was trying to sneak on here. My apologies.
Don't worry, you missed most of me. You missed nothing. So at any rate, there I got to know scheduling and strategies, and these were, again, old media in the days when the schedule wasn't everywhere, like Ellen into the news, into Access on, Wheel at 7, Jeopardy at 7:30, or, nowadays if someone's, really edgy programming-wise, then they will maybe put Jeopardy at 7 and Wheel at 7:30. That is what kind of flexibility there isn't for programmers now. Well, my point is, back in those days, in the 80s, there was a lot. Then I went to work for Norman Lear for a while at Embassy Television when he started his own company to sell his own program. He only owned it about 3-4 months before Coca-Cola bought it, and then was working for Coke, and then midway through that, they sold it to Sony. I was selling shows like Who's the Boss, and Married with Children, and Designing Women in Sanford and Son, and the Norman Lear catalog. And this will be hopefully something that resonates with some of you. I reached a point where I was driving to Beckley, West Virginia, getting ready to talk to a station manager, and in a rudimentary cell phone, which is about the size of a briefcase. I was closing a deal with Sci-Fi for like $7 million. And I'm on my way to Beckley, West Virginia. And I get to Beckley, West Virginia, and the guy says, I can't have lunch with you. The primary is in 3 weeks. I said, you're in Beckley. I could count those votes in an afternoon. You know what's going on here? So I'm driving back and I said, that's enough. I don't want to do this anymore. My contract was about to be up. I was starting to close a lot of deals in cable at that point. And they were getting so big that my bosses, rightfully so, wanted a piece of them. You know, they really needed to be the guys closing these multi-million-dollar deals. I understood that. So what's in it for me? I went in, said to my boss, what are you going to do about my contract? He said, I don't know. What do you want us to do? And my moment of clarity was, I just put control of my life into someone else's hands. So about a day or two later, I drove in. I said, don't renew my contract. Why not? I don't know. I just don't want you to renew it. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do next. By the way, parenthetically, 38 years old, just moved to Greenwich, 2 kids under the age of 4. You know, the bipolarity makes you do that kind of stuff sometimes. But nonetheless, I've never looked back. Now, that's a long answer to your question. So I started the company, sold television shows, Inside the Actors Studio, Forensic Files are 2 shows, the main shows that I brought to television. Company was doing great. We hit new media, big media, we got hit by big media, square in the face, 5 years ago, when our 3 highest revenue producing shows were either canceled or downsized within a month. There went 90–95% of our dependable revenue. And, you know, long story short, we got a couple other shows going. They didn't get renewed. The horizon was rapidly approaching. We hit the cliff. 2 years ago, the company filed for Chapter 11, and a year and a half ago, I had shut it down. So now I'm on my own. I got this little thing called Forensic Files, which is the most popular show of its kind. And I'm doing a couple other things, but that's what I'm doing now. Throughout it all, and this will be hopefully the last paragraph of what I say for now, throughout it all, I don't think I've ever lost the love for television, or more importantly for content, no matter where it comes from. Traditional TV, I'm still pretty much a traditional TV guy, but podcasts, satellite radio, and audio books, and all those things that take part of our time from our day are all you know, pecking us to death like little chickens. So, I'm sorry that was a long story, but I'm an old media guy. Their story is just by virtue of time shorter. So, at any rate, thank you.
I'll try to carry on with Gary's, where Gary left off. So, Jim's Joyce. I run a company called Pollcast, and what we do is we integrate audience participation opportunities for viewers with TV shows like The Price is Right, or a lot of daytime television shows, Biggest Loser, Inside Edition. So we worked with about 30 shows in the last 8 years, allowing the viewers to call in and give their opinion, play along with the game show, that kind of thing. How I came to Pollcast, back up about 10 years, I was working for Nokia in London. Started working with them in '99, just when the mobile internet was created outside of Japan by Nokia. The first Nokia phone, the 7110, was the first internet phone outside of Japan, and I had the pleasure of being responsible for basically creating e-commerce companies on the phone. So I brought Amazon.com on the phone, and launched the first mobile commerce service, eBay, we did Financial Times, Reuters, CNN, we put them all on mobile for the first time. So that was a really exciting time. It was different from media, but similar in a way, because it's new media, e-commerce. But after that, our department moved to Finland it was based in Copenhagen. I was based in London, but the wireless services business was in Copenhagen. And then Nokia launched a mobile entertainment business based in Finland. So I was a lot of time in Finland and put in charge of launching co-marketing campaigns with all the new mobile phone launches when we wanted to. Back then, there wasn't one phone, and it wasn't just the iPhone. There were 20 or 40 phones on the marketplace that Nokia would launch. And I always called it the wall of shame in the mobile phone stores because no one knew how to sell any of them. But one of the ways that we differentiated all the devices was launching them with a motion picture or a television show that was targeted to a certain demographic. So I launched a lot of programs like that with Star Wars, Minority Report, Planet of the Apes. Probably the most well-known one was The Matrix, when Keanu Reeves drops the banana phone off the cliff. What do you call it?
Skyscraper.
Off the skyscraper. Thank you. And it flips around and then it stops and you see Nokia and then it drops. So that was I had a hand in that, and then marketing that around the world with the new phone, which was not that same phone in the movie. You have to deal with movie releases. So one of the things that was interesting from a technology company standpoint was trying to match a mobile phone product launch with a theatrical movie release, which was like mission impossible. But somehow we did. There were some very stressful negotiations. So you can imagine. Sorry, our phone's delayed by a month. Can we push off your theatrical release? It didn't go very well. But that was kind of my entry point into media and entertainment, was doing these co-marketing campaigns with movie studios. And towards the end, we started doing more television, interactive television, launched the first synchronistic interactive TV app on Java. If you remember Java apps, it was before this. But that was a program I did with NBC and AT&T around the show Fear Factor. And the guys that were responsible for Fear Factor, a company called Endemol, it's a Dutch company, their interactive department was the group I was negotiating that deal with for Nokia. And then they left Endemol and started their own company called Two-Way Traffic. And I left Nokia and started the consulting business. So we ended up doing business together, and I ran their U.S. business for several years, and launched a number of businesses within the company. And mobile division was the first thing I launched, which was very successful, just doing mobile entertainment services, ringtones, horoscopes, jokes, chats, stuff like that. Little dumb business that made $30 million a year. So it was okay. And then so learned a lot about mobile technology and services from that, and then sold formats for about a year for them, as the board wanted me to. And then I started a company, another division within the company was doing interactive integrations with TV shows, and that became Pollcast. So when Sony acquired Two-Way Traffic in 2008, stuck around for a little while, and then they lost a lot of money in 2009, and there was an opportunity to exit, make a very nice, graceful exit, and buy one of the businesses back that I had run, which was that last one, and that became Pollcast. So that's been running Pollcast since 2010, and we still work with about a dozen different shows, and now one of the interesting things with disruption in television is we were making a lot of money just off of getting the phone to ring. The host would say, call 1-800, this 855 price and play The Price is Right, and that was just kept cranking and cranking and cranking. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, a funny thing happened. Smartphone penetration got into the lower end of the marketplace, and daytime TV viewers all of a sudden had access to the internet. There was this big black hole in the U.S. market of consumers who didn't have internet access, and they were all daytime television viewers. And all of a sudden, they got smartphones, and they went on the internet for the first time. And now disruption happens. Now they have other things to focus on. You know, they're on Facebook or they're doing something else instead of calling into our shows. So we had to do a lot of fast tracking. I guess one of my big points here is with disruption in television, it's a very fast changing industry, and you've got to move very quickly, and you can't ever get too comfortable.
Hi everyone. I come from ethnic Indian family, so for me, my parents always thought I would be a doctor. I thought that myself. I didn't know I was this creative until I think my life led me here, and I'm happy that I am. I was a banker, and then I got into, I love fashion. Being a woman, you always do. And I loved it, and I got into it, and then I got screwed. And I'm happy that that happened because that left me no option. The financial industry tanked, and I couldn't go back. So I figured out different ways to make things interesting or to find my niche, and I did that with digital media. That developed further into how do you further develop it? And I was very, obviously being interested in fashion, I always molded it that way. Then I got into fashion TV because they were looking to launch here in the American market. And that was an interesting mix. I didn't even know TV that much, but I took the offer because I'm born to believe that you can learn everything that you put your mind to. And I did. It was interesting because I saw how much desire there is for fashion and beauty related content, yet we don't have any channel that's focused to that in the American market. That was really kind of an eye-opener for me. Things did not work out with fashion TV and I, so we decided to part our ways. A lot of that was because I felt like we needed programming that's more engaging. We needed programming that is different than just runway shows back to back. It's interesting to certain people, but at the same time, it's not for someone like myself. So I always looked at different ways, and that's one of my things as to how do we keep our content very engaging. So it was, when I got in with style, it was, I think everyone that we went and pitched the idea to loved it because it was very different. And me being not in traditional TV kind of helped me because I was not following anything in particular. So we made our own shots and we made our own rules, and that worked. Because we're in the age where everything is changing, including television. People are more used to watching 30-second clips online that gets the message across instead of five-minute long tutorials, which won't. So we're becoming impatient as we're growing, as we're evolving. That's what it is, and that's what our focus is. And for us, one of the bigger challenges was, and still is how do we make it engaging? How do we make a 20-minute runtime engaging enough for people? And there's multiple ways that we're doing that. Whether that's, taking smaller segments and putting them all together, or just creating unscripted television, but again, in segments. So it's interesting, but let's see how that folds. It's been an interesting journey for me and media. My background is business management and finance. It blended in beautifully along with fashion as well. But at the end of the day, I really never thought I would be here. But I'm happy I am.
I don't mean to remind everybody I was late, but I just didn't get the question.
The question is, if you couldn't get it from what they say.
The career trajectory?
Well, yeah, what brought you to television? Tell me your path, how you ended up in television.
Oh, sure. So I actually started in television. I'm Katz, and I think through all the different roles I've had, I've kind of rode the wave of disruption. So I started off at MTV, straight out of college, and when I was there, the channel was at a position where ratings were down, and there was issues with brand perception, there was issues with consumption behaviors, but I think we weren't at that point yet where TV viewing was so innovative that it was really crippling the business model as we know it. But there was an inflection point culturally where people were starting to think about how is today's culture different from youth culture in the 90s, and being at MTV, that's like the epicenter of a brand that kind of understands youth marketing. So there's a lot of eyeballs on that brand and kind of leading the way forward in terms of dealing with today's young generation. So we did a lot of work there called the Millennial Edge Study, and basically what that was, it was a repositioning strategy for MTV. So that was like, to me, that was the start of how are things changing in the world, and TV being like a very potent space that you felt all the disruption coming to kind of the shore of the beach. And from there, I went on to work at NBC Universal, and I worked in their integrated media group. And I feel like that also kind of echoes a lot of disruption because they were pioneering, within the industry, a model that drove revenue based off of hyper-targeting throughout the portfolio. So it was like, if a deal's $10 million or above, call us, you want to reach women, we can reach them across TV channels, websites, on the ground, etc. And it'll be like a custom deal, like we'll make your content and execute your content. And then from there, I left the TV world and went to go run a company called YPulse. And YPulse fielded and executed market research projects for brands that were kind of thinking about their organization and their establishment in a post-social media world. So call it millennial or post-millennial, but basically everybody from Jack Daniels to Audi to Teach for America and NFL were doing projects with us to say, here's our brand attributes, how do these look for today's young generation, and how should we think about marketing in kind of a post-social media world. And then from there, from YPulse, I got recruited over to Revolt. Does anybody here know Revolt? So Revolt is a new TV network, or multi-platform TV network. And basically, as a case study of the time, it's just kind of fun because it's like if TV was invented today, how would it look differently than if it was invented, in the 80s and 70s, based on all the different screens and platforms. So it's been a cool challenge, which is like, we're not Nielsen waiting for 2-3 years, so we get to experiment with content, much in the ways that folks who work within TV networks want to, but are sometimes limited because of ratings, which is why you see Friends on all the time, shows like that. It's like the nature of TV is a little bit less creative than you might think sometimes. But it's been quite interesting. It's owned by Puff Daddy, so it's got like the heart of a music label and a creative gut. And I work a little bit more on the business side, kind of thinking about distribution strategy, ad sales strategy, how do we message this brand given all the pain points of the industry, and then working with our creatives to think about how do we hone an understanding of our audience that all of us can execute off of when we're programming music or creating shows or choosing hosts or choosing artists to bring onto our channel. And that's where I am today. So I feel like each of those kind of touches on everything that's changing in the media industry. And here's like, I got pulled over here, over here, over here, as kind of the back end of that wave. I'm sorry I was late.
Thank you. Actually, what I find fascinating here is that we have representatives of long-standing tradition, how you know the television, how it used to be, and actually, nicely, you have also sort of technology. Then we have a brand new kind of targeted television would be a more TV, fashion TV, and then we have what television would be today if you invented today. So, looking at this television business, and we know it's changing, and we're here to talk about disruption. What, in your opinion, is one thing that the television should be afraid of? One disruption that is so dominant that every media company, mostly the old ones, guys, what they should be afraid of? Yeah.
I would say what I call the democracy of content. That the barrier to entry, while at a high level, getting to a network, for example, is probably in many ways tougher than it's ever been because of the ability to put homemade video or professionally done video online. It sort of becomes its own farm league, if you will. And that's where the big networks and studios are trolling. They're trolling, they're looking for those kinds of people. So to me, even though big media is out there and wants to own everything, your best way to probably, if you don't have a lot of experience, to get on is, these days, through the web. So I think that's what they have to look out for. I wish I could say it was regulation, so we can kind of tone it down a little bit, but they ain't gonna happen. So.
Jay, what do you think?
You know, everybody in the TV business will tell you, like, innovative viewing behaviors are the biggest disruption. But I feel like after having spent kind of the last year hearing from distribution folks the pain point in their industry, it's, you know, that's not the biggest thing, because new viewing can be measured and monetized. At the end of the day, I feel like to echo what you're saying, the biggest disruption is going to be just so much content. Now you think about like our brand, like we could go get Big Sean or Wiz Khalifa, a big popular artist, to do something with us. But at the end of the day, is anybody even going to notice? Does anybody care? They could have a Q score of like 100% of our audience loves them, 100% of our audience knows of them. But the bigger question is like, how do you get that noticed? You know, if we just stick it on YouTube and you search Wiz Khalifa, there's a lot of stuff that's going to come up. If you stick it on our channel, is anybody going to show up for like time-shifted viewing? So I think we struggle with that a little bit. How do you actually, people always say, oh, compelling content is the key to success. But that definition of compelling content is almost more complex than ever. How do you get it noticed? Where do you put it? How do you monetize that? So I think that's the thing, because all these distributors will come out with cool OTT products or the anti-OTT product. They'll be fine. They'll start billing themselves as the connected home, not the cable bill. But at the end of the day, it's the content people. You know, we can make great stuff, but how you actually get it noticed, how you get it seen is very challenging when people have so many options. We got a question already.
I'm just wondering, since you're the distribution guy, and I don't mean to say that.
I'm actually not the distribution guy.
Okay, well you said distribution something. Anyway, my question is, and maybe you can answer it, why would you, you know, the Revolt TV has gone after cable distribution. I know you've got, I believe you've got Time Warner and Comcast, and there was, you know, an issue about how many homes you could get into through traditional cable distribution. So my question is, why saddle yourself with that? Why even go for cable distribution if what you're trying to do is experiment and reach people in new and different ways?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you know, the obvious answer once you dig into it is just revenue potential. You know, we could go create a YouTube channel and we'll just be selling ads, distribution's free. We could create a straight-to-consumer model. I mean, there's a lot of options. I think, as somebody said to me at breakfast this morning, the money's still there, it's just leaking a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, there's definitely still an opportunity to kind of bring a channel into the fold of these distributors that creates value on some level that is just far greater than just relying on ad sales alone. And I think that said, you know, Horace Stipp was on a panel at the same organization about 1.5 to 2 years ago. I think we're not even quite yet seeing the back end of how everything's going to change yet. His hypothesis was we've yet to see how the cord cutter comes back to TV after they have kids. So there's also some truth to that. Like, is TV really done and caving, or is it just a temporary thing as the industry realigns and consumers reassess its value in the media landscape?
Yeah, you know, I love that question because that was when we were restarting Style, that was one of the options and questions that I would always get.
Do you guys exist already?
We will be soon, and for me, I still feel like TV is still TV, because if you're just only in digital landscape, you're competing then with so many other content creators and other channels as well. TV still gets, you know, there's barriers to entry, and not everyone can get in, which in a way works better. And that's where I feel like, you know, everyone, especially a company, a network, should focus on. Because TV at the end of the day is still TV. It has not faded anywhere.
I would say the biggest, I mean, just to echo what Jake said, OTT is definitely the biggest. OTT and nice fat broadband actually the biggest disruptor for television, just simply because it's exploiting the whole model. And television companies this year, I think, are making a very big strategic push into apps and online viewing of the content. begin to see in 2015 a lot of other big companies like Discovery and so forth follow after them. And those companies are, it's a big moment to offer your content at the same time everywhere versus time delay because you undermine the value of the cable companies. And now the distributors, in this case, Discovery or NBC Universal, are not afraid of the cable companies as much as they used to be. And the same thing happened to the music industry with broadband, as that happened, and file sharing networks. The same thing's happening to television. So the wider the bandwidth and the deeper the penetration, the more disruption there is, the more it gets into grassroots America, not just youth, but it permeates throughout the entire ecosystem. And everyone's scrambling to try to latch on to 18 to 34-year-old viewers, and they're having a really, really tough time with it because there's so much disruption happening there. Everyone's watching content wherever they want to watch it. I don't even have a cable subscription at home anymore, not for years. I stream everything that I want. I have cable in the office because I need to stream shows for work, but that's basically it for personal consumption. I mean, I'm 41, and I cut the cord years ago already. So I can imagine that whole market is on its head for traditional television companies. And the real challenge for them, of course, is like Jake says, how do you get it noticed? How do you get your content noticed? Because before it was walled garden, your network and Nielsen ratings, you were able to just put, you couldn't put anything, they had to be good shows. You had to get good talent that could keep you, competitive with the other networks. But you're competing against, it's a bunch of, guys in a room, between the big networks or the top 5 cable companies who were, fighting for domination. And now it's leaking in a big way, and everyone is scrambling for those audiences. So, an interesting example I'll give for my business, not being a network, but working with all the networks. I've had an opportunity to really see what how the consumers react to, interacting with their shows, and whether we do it over the phone or mobile, social media, and while we still find that the majority of Americans will engage more through the phone, just because everyone can do it. My mantra has always been mass is cash, so I've been very reluctant to bring on new platforms too fast, just because I look at the biggest segment of the market, not just 18 to 34-year-olds, but 2 to 99-year-olds, and what they're willing to do. But to give you an example, show like, as I started talking about in my introduction, 2 years ago, everyone was, all of our, I say 60 to 70% of our callers were calling with the landline. And 2 years later, today, it's about 70–80% mobile. So it's completely flip-flopped in just 2 years. And the majority of those people with cell phones that are calling in with a smartphone, because it's hit the low end of the market now after 2007 since the iPhone came out. So you're 8 years into smartphones, really in the U.S. Plus. So that's highly disruptive. But we found that whether the networks are very fast to try to be trendy, and let's do Facebook, let's do Twitter, even when we're marketing to 25, 54, 55 plus audiences. And yeah, I understand you need to do that because you want the 18 to 49-year-olds, and you want to seem cool, and you're doing more reality TV on the cooking channel, but your core is 60-year-old women. So we're always keep them aware of, new platforms that are coming. I mean, if they want to do something on Snapchat or Twitter or whatever, I'm down with it, but do other platforms as well that your 60-year-old woman will engage with, like the phone or going online or texting it. But that's always been a very hard challenge for us, is when to put more focus on new platforms and that's something that everyone's struggling with. But I think the biggest challenge for us and the networks is as more viewers go onto YouTube and away from linear television, it's harder and harder for us also to interact with those audiences, because you can't do anything with it. You can do very little with the YouTube. You can do pre-roll, but that's pretty much it. You can put some display ads if you have enough traffic. You can share that with Google, but other than that, it's not like you can get people, especially through a mobile device, to click on a YouTube video or go into Microsoft. It's still very primitive video player compared to what we'd like to do with those audiences, what we can do with television, linear television, by pushing people to a hashtag or to call in. So that's been our challenge. Our biggest challenge is just keeping up with all those people going away from linear television and how to get them there and the shows.
It's not only fast, it's only many audiences, but the other thing is how to be noticed. Rida, your channel's gonna come up somehow this year.
Yes.
How are you gonna make it to be noticed?
For us, I feel like we have our niche, we have our built-in audience. When we say fashion and beauty, that all of a sudden attracts mostly women, which is our target. But then we're always looking at different partnerships in different ways, whether that's through our content. For example, we have a reality show on Tommy Hilfiger and Andy Hilfiger and the whole Hilfiger family. We're getting more into kind of like the Food Network approach in a way when it comes to content, where I love how they made just watching someone cook so interesting. And that's kind of, I love the way they did that. And I love how each of their programs just has such a different approach, whether that's through competition, whether that's through, different cuisines, or just taking people out of traditional kitchens, and really taking, for example, Anthony Bourdain, which I think is genius. So, it's really playing with content. I feel like, again, we're back where content is king, and you just have to have your niche. You have to really do, I'm a believer that to be successful, you have to do what no one else is doing yet. And I feel like that's something that would work for us. As far as digitally, we actually have a patented software that actually allows you to interact with our programming. So if I'm watching you guys, or you guys are watching me, and you want to see what blazer he's wearing, you can actually click on that, and that will tell you what blazer he's wearing. Not through a pop-up, but it actually records everything, everywhere that you click or touch. And then it actually tells you in a list, once you're done watching the clip, what it is, and where you can actually even, what color it is, what brand it is, what make it is, what year it is, and then you can actually even go and purchase it. That's an additional option. So, we're working through different partnerships, and we also have partnerships with traditional magazines. And we're also working with different partnerships with the big publishing companies, and how we're going to utilize their digital platform, and in return they get our platform, which is more linear. So, I feel like we're going a very different route, a very non-traditional route, but it's a very interesting route, because I feel like that's something that no one really has explored significantly, and it's been very successful for us. And just the fact that we're not, our programming's not all over the place, we're just very focused on our programming. I feel like that just really helps us. And what also helps is the fact that no one's doing it yet. So we don't have to compete with anyone.
What's interesting to me, as we're talking about disruption, there is still room in the conversation, I think, for a programming theory back in the days of only 3 networks, which is least objectionable programming. that sometimes the audience would be there just because they were comfortable with that show. It wasn't like they liked it, but they didn't like anything else that was on. The program I sell, Forensic Files, if you've tuned on HLN ever, you've watched Forensic Files because, frankly, I think they overplay it. But it does very well for them because it's, even though it's about murder and crime investigation and forensics and so on, when people turn it on, they know what they're going to get. They don't need to have it promoted to them. It's one of those things that it's there. It's like a coffee table book or something that you're comfortable with watching. I mean, that's part of my sales pitch as I sell it around the world. And I will tell you that, you know, we're walking the walk too. You know, RTL in Germany bought the show for 10 years, which is virtually unheard of in any business. They renewed it 6 years ahead of time. That was a good day for Gary. So while I believe every content provider, be it a producer, be it a platform, a network, an app, and anything, we're all getting pecked to death by chickens. And we're all in the same barnyard, which is competing for eyes, you know, competing for time. And now everyone is our competition. Everyone. Because you can get everything, everything.
Good point. I want to, last maybe two more questions and then we open to a, because since you observe all this disruption, all these things that change around you, also every day-to-day job is changing. Is this really changing for what you expect from the job candidates? And I want to, you know, the audience here is also students, or people who may be thinking of going into this. Is there something particular that you have to know today that you didn't have to know 2 years ago? Getting into a media business, a television business?
2 years ago.
Yeah, so
I'm
far.
glad I was good at typing.
It's evolutionary. I mean, you have to be, I mean, I myself, I learn new things every single day, every single meeting. And every single meeting, I know that they learn something from me as well, hopefully. But I feel like, you know, nowadays you just have to really be able to morph very quick, change very quick, because there's no longer any, per se, job description, unless you're an accountant, unless you're a doctor, unless you're, you know, one of those careers that just have not evolved and won't. So, you know, I feel like we just need to be, for me personally, it's just, I mean, unless, again, if it's accounting, unless if it's law, it's, media is ever changing, and I feel like this is the time, we're at the cusp where media is really changing significantly. Will it go completely to digital, OTT? We don't know. Will it come back to TV, linear? We don't know. So, you know, people just need to be able to learn every single day, because it will keep on changing. New technologies come out, new platforms come out, and you really have to very quickly adapt.
I would say in the corporate world of media, there's less and less of a silo happening. There used to be, you know, here's programming, here's media, here's ad sales, and production, and that just doesn't work that way anymore. If you're selling formats inside a studio, you can't sell a format today without having an ancillary and maybe strategy to sell with it. Oh, this is how we do Facebook. This is how we do Twitter. This is how we're going to distribute on Vine and do the YouTube strategy and da 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 da. You know, when you're selling the format, because the acquisitions people in the networks, they expect that. They expect you to come in with a whole package, not just the idea for format, but everything that goes along with it to help them make money. So it's you know, from the outside, when you don't work in the industry, it's just like in advertising, you think that the ad agencies and the networks are the most creative people in the world. It's not so true. There's a lot of creativity, but when you're coming in, you're the advertiser, you're the brand, you're expected to come into an agency, especially if you're looking on the media buying side, they're not creative at all. They're they're used to buying certain networks, and if you're a creative agency, that's a different thing. But inside of a TV network, you can't just go in there as a format developer and sell an idea. They expect you to do everything. When we pitch to broadcasters, it's not enough to just pitch a platform. We have to storyboard the whole creative out for them and show how it's going to work with their show, frame by frame, and write the scripts. And we do all the creative work. Everything that you see that we do on television, we've done it all ourselves. I mean, they actually shoot it in the studio with the talent, but every word that comes out of their mouth, every frame they're shooting, the way they're shooting has been developed by us. So inside the studios, they're not expecting to say, okay, I want to go and have a job in new media, or I want to have a job in programming, without knowing how the whole ecosystem works, how you can take an idea and apply multi-platforms. So I think as to the original question, which is, what skills do you need to have now that you didn't need to have for 2 years? It's really holistic understanding of what platforms are utilized to drive eyeballs and engagement. You have to have a clear understanding of them all, and it makes requires everyone to be more technically savvy, to really understand the technology and what you can do with the technology. Because if you don't understand the capabilities of the platforms that you're trying to engage your audiences with, you obviously can't exploit them from a business standpoint, from a profitability standpoint. And that's one thing that we work very hard at. My company is trying to stay with the pace in which media is moving, and try to stay relevant, and try to imagine, how do you monetize a tweet? How do you monetize, a Snapchat or something? How do you make money off of that? Because we figured out we're masters of monetizing a phone call, and we're masters of monetizing a text message. But when the networks say, well, we don't want to use phone numbers anymore. We don't want to reply to people who tweet, and our privacy policies changed, and we can't show the viewers that we've maintained their data to call them back or tweet them back or whatever, and you just pull your hair out. You're thinking, okay, that's a lot of hair for me to pull out.
Imagine how I feel.
Yeah, you used to have long hair like me too. This is what happened. This is what happens to you in the media.
I'm 37 years old.
But yeah, you got to stay ahead of the game and really understand what's coming. Look at all these new platforms that the 18 to 24-year-olds are using today, and figure out how to exploit those and drive revenue back to broadcasters. It's not just enough to engage the audiences, you've got to figure out different ways to monetize those audiences as well, because if they're watching the content, and that's the difference. It used to be new media was just promotional. Everything's driving to linear consumption, where the big ad sales model was, where you could drive the CPMs. But now it's the whole model is exploding. So now you need to make money in those channels as well with advertising. Because you're not going to charging $14.95 a month. HBO is trying to do that's not going to. I don't think that's going to last. And how many times are you going to pay $15 a month for a channel? I think very few times. When you're paying $7.99 a month for Netflix, I think that's where you have an $8 or $9 a month service that gives you as much as $100 cable bill. You've got a really big problem with the business model then, and especially when those audiences are all over the place now, and you've got to figure out how to put advertising against those. Then you go to a brand advertiser like a P&G and they sell, I'll take 100 million of everything that you have the lowest CPM that you can survive on. Well, that doesn't work if you have 100,000 audience here and 100,000 audience there and 1 million here, 50,000 here. When it's all broken up like that, it's really hard to sell to an advertiser. And that's one of the big challenges that networks have moving forward, maintaining profitability. When these are all things that they were giving away to the advertisers before, and now they have to monetize them, or they're going to go out of business.
Okay.
Yeah, I might, what skills are valuable when you're entering? I feel like because we're in a time with so many more questions and answers, that these organizations that are at the forefront of all this change are kind of inverting their hierarchy, where ideas can come from anywhere. So I think one of the biggest understated skills you can have going in is to have ideas. I mean, being of a culture that is very close to how new media is truly used is very valuable currency once you enter a TV organization. And so specifically, it's like ideas on how to amplify traditional with social. And I think the other thing that's also understated is, departing from the academic world into a TV business. I mean, part of the reason I love TV is because it's speed. You get a report card every single day with Nielsen ratings. And if they're up, you celebrate. If they're low, you quickly do some consumer insights work. You try to inform creative development. You try to course correct, scheduling, programming, etc. But it's very fast-paced. And so I think another understated skill is like, how can you enter that organization and pace at their speed? Because it's incredibly fast-paced, and that's just the nature of TV. And it's quite exciting, but it definitely requires people who can quickly project manage, get tasks done, and be self-managed, which is quite understated for entry-level staff, etc.
I was going to, as I'm hearing Jake and James speak about the audience research that they're doing, it reminds me that one of the most valuable experiences I've had in working has been running research. At first you think, oh boy, I'm going to be playing with spots and dots, and this was in the early days of cable, and all of a sudden other, it was ABC, CBS, NBC, other, and then other started becoming WGN or WTBS or HBO or what have you. And to watch that evolve and to be able to understand it, and as a programmer needing to know that, as a salesperson needing to know that. I can hardly think, other than sales itself, I can't think of another skill that is so transferable across any part of any creative company as research. Knowing the essence of what you are and how to make money on it is really what it's all about. Excuse me.
Thank you. So, last question and I open it. What's your best career advice? Must be one. Must be one.
I think one of the biggest myths out there, and this is a little bit controversial, is that you've got to stay for a long time at one job. And I feel like the irony of it is, imagine if you stayed in one role in this industry that is changing. You were joking about 2 years, like every quarter something else happens. So I think just like in the ad agency world, don't be shy to, we're in New York City, and there's so many opportunities here to contribute and explore other opportunities that are going to propel you as the industry innovates. I had a dinner with somebody tonight whose skill set, frankly, we was talking about, and I'm like, every year this becomes more and more obsolete. So to be in a position where you're at the front end of reinvention through exploring new opportunities, bringing new ideas to the table is definitely a core component of, I think, a strong career with a long trajectory in this day and age in television.
Keep on changing time.
When I was an intern at Morgan Stanley, back when I was in college a long time ago, one of my mentors told me that you new grads are so polite because we would just say yes to everything and we didn't have a mind of our own. I don't know if that was that, but I really did take that seriously, and I feel like now I'm nothing like what I was as an intern, and I feel like that helped perhaps shape my career.
I would say from an entrepreneurial standpoint, this is a great city to be an entrepreneur in. find a gap and fill it. It's the best advice I ever got. There are always, with new technology and new things coming out, big companies are always slow to adapt things, and there are always ways to make money. My company exists for almost a decade now, doing exactly that. You know, the service we provide isn't revolutionary, but it fills a gap. You know, the TV networks want to engage with their audiences, and we provide the platform for that, and it makes money. It's something that they'd be happy for that they have now, and it's a little niche, but when your customers are NBC Universal and CBS and Fox and for 10 years, you know, it does all right. So there are a lot of opportunities like that in the media industry for you to figure out, you know, where there's a gap and try to fill it. Or in other words, there was another quote I liked, which was, identify the corridors of indifference and run like hell down through it. You know, before somebody else does. Because, you know, when I created this business model inside two-way traffic and presented it to all the MDs, I remember we were at a management meeting in MIT before MIP, and we were doing a lot of call TV shows, which back then were these interactive live game shows, low production game shows. So you'd call in and be a live host who would play these dumb games with the viewers in late night and daytime, you know, unprofitable time slots, and you'd call into a 900 number or send a premium text message to try to get into the studio to answer the pie in the sky question and win some money. So, you know, really interesting formats, but everyone's kind of tired of doing that because the viewers didn't really like it, but because there's so much of it. So when I created this model, they tried, well, the board asked me to sell those kind of shows in the U.S. I told them it would never work, just because it's a ratings-driven market. And, you know, I spent 11 months going to all the networks and telling them that I've got this great idea. It's gonna crash your ratings for your lead-in, but it's gonna make you more money in your time slot. It wasn't a very popular idea. They said, Jace, we really like you, but if I say yes to this deal, I'll get fired. So I created this model, and everyone was like, God, you know, we could sell this in Spain, we could sell this in Hungary, we could sell this in the UK. This is a great idea. And it was the most obvious idea that no one had thought of. And there are a lot of very obvious ideas that no one has thought of. And you just have to think of them.
This question I took more seriously than all the other notes, mostly because of what my background has been, kind of serendipitous at times, somewhat tragic, having to shut down a company and that sort of thing. And so I have four. And the first one actually came from a journalism professor I had at the Newhouse School. And I had just done a newscast or something, and he turned from the screen to the class and he said, Lico, you're not as good as you think you are. And, you know, for good or for bad, that's followed me, you know. That's like something a stern parent would say when you're 5 and you're bedwetting at 13. But at any rate, having lost a company, I will tell you two things that, damn it, I read these things as I was running the company and then closing it down. And if I made any mistake, it wasn't adhering to these two. Number one, cash is king. Number two, bail out of any business that's not making money. In my particular case, I could have shut Cable Ready down 5 years ago. Everyone would have gotten their money. I would have walked away with a couple million. I would have shut a company down and put 20 people out of work, and I wasn't too crazy about that, so I didn't. But I had one piece of information that, and I pulled this out of here because I'm literally writing down all the pithy sayings, passages from books, Bible passages, inspirational quotes, advertisement, anything that gets me over the hump, you know, and you're all going to have a hump. You've had humps. You're going to have more humps. You know when you get on an airplane and they're making that announcement, and you've heard it so many times, it goes in one ear and out the other, and that is, If for some reason the plane develops a problem, the masks will come down. What do they say next? Please attend to your needs first before attending to the needs of others. That's the best advice I can share with you. Please attend to your own needs first before attending to the needs of others.
Well, they have a breadth of knowledge right now and breadth of advices. Do we have questions?
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Julia. I'm actually an alum of the program, and I work at AMC Networks in the advertising side of business. And I was just wondering, one of the main disruptions I'm seeing is on the advertising side, of course, is with like programmatic and addressability. And I know some of you come from the more content side, some of you come from research, but any of you can kind of speak to how that's changing the industry.
You know, I'm sort of the one of the horses in the parade, I guess. I provide content. However they want to deal with that, whether they want to run it 5 days a week or put their own host on it or grab a sponsor or what have you. That's really up to them because these are finished programs. The development of a program or and bringing all the other aspects of it into it are something that, at least on that project, I'm not really doing. But just so you know the distinction, I think it's important to know.
You should define what programmatic is for the room. I guess anybody doesn't know, it's kind of a foggy term.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's the term of 2015. I mean, you probably have a different definition than I do and everyone else does, but I mean, it's coming from the digital space, and basically, as they're talking about, there's so much content out there, and CPMs are dropping, and so basically aggregating the content and selling using a software, so taking out potentially, buyers and planners and, the people out of it, and it's really,
But they've been talking about that for years. They were talking about that 30 years ago.
I know NBCU is building a programmatic system, like it's happening.
But when I was at Katz, they said, in 1980, oh, we can do, we don't need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a topic for next year at this, but I
The
think.
difference is that now you've got, $18 billion flowing through programmatic ad exchanges and digital. So the TV people are starting to pay attention, especially with ratings dipping last year. And, Jake, I wonder for you, you were saying you're not Nielsen ready yet, right? But presumably you have a demographic segment that could be targetable. So if you're not on Nielsen, if there is a programmatic way to buy, that could benefit you because you could sell. If you don't have a rating point, you'll get a crappy CPM in the old media buying method. On the other hand, if you can sell an audience with certain attributes based upon programmatic buying, then maybe you can, elevate that to a deal even if you don't have a Nielsen rating point.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Something we can talk about so much is when you don't have an audience that you can prove and hold up, what is your value proposition in the industry of people who are media buyers, who buy CPMs, who are leaning into things like programmatic buying. The avenue we've taken is, how do you engage the millennial and post-millennial audience who's the most disruptive in the TV industry? Our answer is content marketing. And our feeling is nobody really understands best practices in content marketing across categories. How do you monetize a Snapchat? How the hell do you promote a show on Snapchat? How do you amplify a campaign with it? There's hashtags like, I have hashtags for breakfast. You know what I mean? Like there's more to it than the things we know. And the approach we've taken is to think of us like, yes, we're a reach vehicle, but we're also a content creation agency. And the thing with programmatic that will, the pendulum will swing in that direction and it'll swing back and land somewhere in the middle. I think that will pull it back is, in a world of so much content, if you put your reach on autopilot, you're missing out on the most important component of advertising today, which is engagement. And so I think that's what we're watching very closely. Yes, you've got the big brands of the world, leaning into programmatic. You've got the small guys like Revolt entering the conversation. And there's always going to be leftover budget, money on the table, or innovative solutions that maybe do put us into the mix.
But the greater reality to me is that you watch any network at any time and you're still liable to see a 1-800 Geico commercial or the, order the coins or the Shawala or, whatever. So there's still, per inquiry ads are are still the bread and butter of so many networks and platforms out there.
Well, when a network doesn't rate, or especially now, it's another area where we're looking to fill a gap. Is there's a big movement from linear television now this year into apps and app viewing, yet the audiences aren't there in apps yet. You have very small audiences in an app who's downloaded it and actually watches content through the app. It's going to grow significantly over the next few years, but right now it's, so when you launch like a digital network, branded network, you have to do DR. You don't have really the option of brand marketing because no one will buy it. It's not rated yet, you don't have the audience. The only way you can monetize that network is through direct response advertising, per inquiry, starting with per inquiry advertising, and not even paid DR, but per inquiry advertising. I'm sure you'll find this when you launch Style TV is you'll have some brand opportunities that want to be associated with the network because of what it is, but traditional brand advertisers won't buy until you have a rating, and whether that's through programmatic or traditional media buying, DR is always going to be there to lift these new channels up. It's the only way to make money off of them, and I think it's quite the inverse of the way I see the future going. Is there'll be more DR and less over the years, just because audiences are so fragmented, becoming so fragmented that you have to generate, or the brand advertising will be through these programmatic buying, exchanges where you can buy multiple things in a package like that. So your traditional ad sales group in a network trying to sell a YouTube channel is not going to be that successful. You've got to be part of a bigger buy to leverage brand advertising in the future.
More questions here?
Yeah. Gosh, all this is making my head explode, this feedback. I've sold TV for Univision. I've sold digital, I've sold print. I think today it sounds like the big thing is engagement around communities. So if you're able to develop content and amplify it into different communities, that's where the power is. So, Jake, you were saying, still getting that distribution, Time Warner is still, that's where the money is, it's leaking, but to get into the homes is still important. But, looking at it from the advertiser perspective, don't advertisers today, they have the same challenge, right? If they want to reach millennials, it's harder to reach them than ever, right? And to reach them today, they have to look at different ways of reaching them beyond traditional cable or networks. And so is the trend going to be, and we're seeing this already, that marketers are going to become more and more media? Like they're going to be involved more in creating content and pushing it out into channels and sponsoring content. So that for Style, for the TV network you're creating, could that be L'Oreal comes on board and says, you know what, we like what you're doing, we have some ideas on how we can push it out around products we're selling that we're interested in, and come in early stage. So could almost the sales efforts be almost going out early stage and developing content with partners?
That's very true.
Is that happening more?
We're feeling that. I'm not sure if that is because we have our niche or if that is going on with everyone, because we have had no difficulty with sponsorships. For them, it's very clear it's what they want to align to. If they want to align to fashion, if they want to align to beauty. The good thing that we have that works for us is a lot of brands that advertise, even if they're drink brands, alcohol brands, they do want to be aligned with one or the other, including even cars. So for us, that works. However, if we were just like any other channel that was just more broad, I'm not sure if that would have worked that well. But for us, that has worked beautifully, actually.
Last more question?
Kind of piggybacking off that, do you see branded content plays both digitally and on the linear side in the next 3 to 5 years becoming more valuable to advertisers because you're reaching your audience in a narrative voice of what you stand for and what the brand stands for as well, and like collaboration sense? You mentioned Revolt has like an in-house agency to, I guess, help these brands reach the millennials. Do you see networks and content hubs aligning that way, either on either side of the spectrum, digital, linear, or both?
Yeah, and so Revolt is small and nimble, but we have folks who basically, find any TV organization, like you have to be able to speak digital. And the other thing you're able to speak is distribution, and not the type of distribution we're talking about, but like if content is king, distribution is queen. And that's not a knock to the women's movement. I just mean that in the sense that you can't just make something, you have to know how to place it and execute it on different platforms, not just do that platform well, but connect the platforms. Like how do you go from TV to YouTube and Snapchat? So I think that because you can basically reach audiences anywhere, and you can go buy an Instagram follower for $1. You can hyper-target on partner websites in ways that didn't exist even 5 years ago. We're seeing content creation plays just be the next big thing in marketing. What it really comes down to is we talk about the concept of brand positioning. That's almost impossible in this day and age to position a brand. Things are so liquid, one day you're in, one day you're out. To truly compete in social and engage young folks as well as any demographic, because every demographic is influenced by tech natives, it's like brand behavior is the new brand positioning. And brand behavior is expressing the brand through compelling content in different ways across platforms. So I think in other words, yeah, like gone are the days of just blowing that 30-second spot or 5-second spot on the Super Bowl and crossing your fingers that that's enough and sales will go up. And here comes a time where marketing is 24/7 and across all different platforms where it makes sense for your category.
And just to add to that, to your question, I think for marketers becoming more involved in programming, I think when the channels are so spread out between different platforms, there's only so much a network can provide for you. So I think when you, at least for us, when we're developing campaigns, like marketing campaigns, we find ourselves creating a lot more content than we used to. For a 30-second spot, we would produce that. It's easy to produce digital creative, and we find there's so many places to put it, whether you're doing SMS marketing or whether you need a landing page, you're doing click-to-call, you're doing, you've got 5 different sizes for display ads. There's so much content creation that goes on the advertising side that marketers have to do a lot more work, I think, to service all the different platforms that they're putting their brand out to. And because the production cost of digital is much smaller, if you're doing video, it's still largely the same depending on what you're doing, but for advertisers, it's not a 30-second spot, it's display, it's a text message, it's this or that, so it's much cheaper to produce, it's easier to produce, and it's better done in-house by a marketer and delivered to the platform versus expecting the platforms to do it for you. So that's changed. It's making marketers like us, we play kind of a middle role between content destinations and advertisers developing interactive platforms. We're doing more content creation than we ever have because of mobile. So that's something that has changed very rapidly.
James, you started to talk about costs of production and where you're running. So I did some more homework so I could give you some takeaway information here. Talked to a good friend of mine who's probably one of the preeminent agents in the nonfiction business, the non-scripted entertainment business. And I asked him, walk me through who's paying what, from the top of the tier broadcast network to the bottom of the tier. I don't say this in importance, but but in terms of digital production, just for digital, as opposed to promotional elements or something. Again, this is nonfiction, so if you're talking something like How to Get Away with Murder, it's, you know, 2-3 million. But on the nonfiction side, if a broadcast network like CBS, ABC, or NBC had it, it would be $600,000 to $1 million an hour. If it was someone like the CW, a lesser tier network, it would be somewhere between $500,000 to $900,000 per hour. By the way, these are, you could probably talk to 5 people and get 10 different answers on this, but these are the ones I got, and they're the most current ones. Okay. The next tier would be the USAs, the Turner Networks of the world, A&E probably is in this bunch. And you're looking at roughly $500,000. Some of the others, like Discovery, TLC, they'll come in slightly below that, $450 an hour, something like that. Then you get to the more, I'll say, more indoor networks, the studio-based networks, like food and cooking and that sort of thing. Then you're into $300 to $350. You start going a little bit lower into cooking, the cooking channel itself, FYI, Esquire, some of these. You're now at about $250,000 an hour. And a lot of these networks are buying half hours. So in some cases, I'm just simply doubling the license fee. Let's say a tertiary tiered network at Discovery, like Velocity. They might pay $100,000 per hour. We did a show for them for $85,000 a half hour. How did we do it? We did it in Connecticut. The tax break gave us a profit. It was the only way we could do it. I tried to get a price for nonfiction on Netflix and that platform, but they really don't do much of that. So it's their effort is in the big name scripted category. But I did, in talking to this agent, he said, and he represents, if I mentioned Pawn Stars, he'd say, whoa, that's a pretty big show. Yeah, he sold that one, and everything that that production company has done since then, and others too. So he's got a lot of shows on the air. Does business with just about every network. I said, tell me what you've done in the digital space. Have you been asked, or have you pitched producing content just for a YouTube channel a summer? He said, Gary, we can't make it work. We can't make the dollars work. They want to pay us $15,000 for 5 minutes, and they only want to order 5 of them. So how can you build a business on that? For my friend, you can't. But these are roughly where you can expect things to be at. And I think this, the subliminal message on this is, what's the brass ring or the golden ring? It's still a network television show, isn't it? You know, you're still going to get the biggest bang for your buck. I won't say every YouTube star feels this way, but boy, would they love a primetime show. Boy, would they love shit my dad says, like CBS, you know, when they bought the YouTube guy and made it into a show, or tried to make it into a show. And now to speak for themselves.
And it's the same thing with our business. You know, we coddle onto CBS. You know, we love Price is Right, even though the viewers are, well, questionably intelligent and old and poor. But you know, if anyone's really good at pulling blood out of a stone, it's Pollcast. But we love those people because there are 5 million of them every day that we can market to. And when you're on YouTube or somewhere else, you know, your audiences, you know, are much smaller. I've had many opportunities to take the business outside the U.S. I've been friends at RTL and SBS, and you know, I could be doing the business outside the U.S. But for one deal in a daytime syndicated show that I get that has 2 million viewers, I have to make 10 deals in Germany to do the same thing. So while I can still pick up a new syndicated show once a year, or 3 or 4 once a year, I'm not going to go outside the U.S. because unless I hire a team there. But it's just like finding people who, I'm building a team that can scramble from day one and go and sell the business into 10 or 20 shows in a year is really hard. So, you know, it's the same thing for a format. times to make any money. And it's even worse in digital, as you alluded to.
Yeah, and the cable model now, and the broadcast model is 5 episodes, 10 episodes, 6 episodes. And chances are, if you're a production company, you're going to lose money on that deal. You might break even if you have a season 2. If you have a season 3, that's when life starts getting a little rosier. But how many programs make it to a 3rd season? Like, hardly any.
Okay, since we're running kind of on time, I would like to thank you first of all to respond to all the questions and sharing with us all your insights from the television industry. I hope you all appreciate our speakers, and let's give them